Hello everyone, I'm David, I'm working at Selleo, and today I will talk about how to improve your GitHub repository, so basically how to give some steroids to your GitHub. Agenda for today's talk will be, we will talk about why you should use and how to use templates. Also, we will talk briefly about how to cover coverage in your project with GitHub. Also, we will talk a little about how to take care of updates of your projects, basically packages. How to improve the speed of your builds. It's more related with CI, but still. Also, how you should take care of changes in your project, and how you can better document your project. Okay. Basically, in the past, we had a tool in our company that allows us to give feedback to other people to their code they write. And most of that feedback later on was replaced by Rubocop or any other tool that basically could automate this part. Of course, it doesn't mean that we could automate everything there, but still we saw that seems that this tool was redundant in most cases that time, after all. And that's why I created this presentation, basically to show you that some things that some recurring tasks that we do every day can be easily automated, especially on GitHub. The first one is PR templates. Who of you is using PR templates actively on GitHub? Raise your hands. Okay, seems like half of people here. What it gives you, basically, if you use templates for PR creation on GitHub, you are not only documenting your work and what's your code all about, but also you tell people who are looking at your pull request that your comprehension of the feature is aligned with the customer requirements. Also, it's much easier to get all important information that are required for quality assurance for people who are reviewing your code because they have it in a single place. It's also easier to test if you, for instance, provide testing scenario where you explicitly describe necessary steps to find out is it working well or not. Also, thanks to templates, you can attach even video preview that takes minutes to produce. And for instance, if your customer is CTO, he can just click on this video, which points to YouTube, and see in seconds that it works as expected, at least on your local environment. Of course, if you have automatic tests, then it's even more, he can be even more sure that it is okay, but still those few minutes are pretty worth it to spend, because sometimes if you have tons of pull requests, you may not have full time to review every pull request locally. Maybe you will just do it on staging later on, but still you can save your time and time of your customer or whatever, or whoever will review your feature. Okay, this is one of the newest feature, like, I don't know, maybe it has a month or two on GitHub. It's pretty useful, especially for big repos, where you can create separate templates for each type of issue that someone can create in your repository. It's especially useful for open source, where maintainers have to have some template or framework for issues, so they don't have to ask following questions like, can you tell me how to reproduce that? Can you give me some context of this issue? Stuff like that. You can put everything inside your issue template, and then when someone wants to create an issue, he just have to fulfill this template, just ask a few questions, bam, 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 and that's it. So it's really simplifying and also makes some order in your repository. And this is the place where you can basically find it in your repo. Okay, coverage. Does any of you is checking spec coverage of your builds regularly? I mean, is it important factor for you to make build red, for instance, that cause failure of the build? For any of you, is there anyone who does that? Yeah, cool. So till now we were using KNGAM, which basically automatically do it for you. So together with SimpleCov, at least in Rails projects or Ruby projects, it gives you automatic check. Does your spec coverage is not lower? In that case, it was like 91% of coverage. So you don't have to worry that it's basically lower each iteration of your code. It was okay, but still it does. It was like more for like stats. It doesn't bring as much value. But there is a better option for you. You can use one of the apps that are available on GitHub, on Marketplace, where you have much better reports, and basically you can even get the report for new changes that came to your project. So basically you can even cause the failure of your build if changes that were introduced cause I don't know, or wasn't covered in 100%, for instance. So each iteration you can even see which file wasn't covered, because this tool reports that for you as well. Okay, how about updates? Quite often we have to worry about keeping our project up to date. And usually we just took, I don't know, GAM file or package.json or any other file that is responsible for our dependencies, for instance. And we just try to bump all those dependencies, usually manually. But we don't have to do that because there are tools that are dedicated for that. For instance, Greenkeeper. Once it's attached to your GitHub repository, it will automatically create a pull request on each update of the packages that you are using. What's cool about that, it's the fact that if you have pretty nice test coverage or spec coverage, then it will basically do checks for you. So once you bump the version of, once the version of your package is automatically bumped and you trust your specs, you just have ready to merge pull request that in theory should be fully mergeable without any issues. What about speed? We had quite lately, we had a problem on one of our projects where our build took about an hour, and it becomes pretty It was pain in the ass, to be honest, because we had to wait too long for full build to finish. I talked with people a little in our company how they handle that, and maybe there is some quick win to get. And in fact, there was one. There is knapsack gem, which is used on one of our projects. What it does is basically split your build into 2 or more separate builds, and in case of two nodes, if you run concurrently your build, you get almost 50% lower time of your build, and even you can keep your, for instance, spec coverage tools on place as well, because you can use, for instance, after success at the end of your Travis configuration file, where you can add some extra checks, which has access to shared directory for all those builds that are available here. The other cool stuff is that you can, for instance, split your builds if you have more nodes to work on based on type of specs you have. So, for instance, you can see that only, for instance, policies are failing. Also, you don't have to wait for full spec suite to fail, because you can fail the whole build right after one spec. So you better utilize your Travis in that way. Also, on one of the projects, I heard that changes that are handled there, I mean code changes, were handled by hand, basically. They had to rebuild their changelog every time they do some merges, they do some releases. And of course, we don't have to do it manually. We have to stay strictly to some regime to make it useful, because if someone will, I don't know, make very misleading pull request names, then it's not going to work like that. But basically, if you stick to some regime, then those changelogs can be fully automated. Basically. So all you have to do, this is a gem called GitHub changelog generator, which basically regenerates your changelog based on the pull requests you merged, issues, and releases. So you just run one command, and the complete changelog was rebuilt. And there is alternative, pretty cool one, called Lerna, which even gives you, based on the labels that you attach to your pull requests, some fancy icons and fancy grouping, and some stats at the end who are the committers. It's especially useful if you have to maintain open source libraries, so you don't want to do that stuff over and over. But also, if your project is getting bigger and bigger, it's nice to consider such tool that will automate that for you, and you will save some time for some cooler stuff to do. Okay, I know it's documenting your code, it's not the coolest thing we can do, but in terms of libraries, it's very expected, I would say. We quite often look at the source code, for instance, if documentation sucks. And thanks to inch CI org, you can basically get some fancy badge that just tell you what's the coverage of your library in terms of documentation. Also, you can get some pretty nice suggestions. So it's like a linter for your documentation, especially if you have some more complex part of the code which you would like to comment, but I would highly recommend it, especially for libraries. So the whole point My point is that your repository is like a product, and you should treat people who visit your repo and contributors of your repo as customers. You won't get as much customers as you can, so you should focus on deliver cool stuff, cool features there, and not focusing on tasks that are repetitive. Basically, don't waste your time, and automate whatever you can, especially for contributors that are not always our teammates. They don't have to be in our organization, so templates, for me at least, is a must. Okay, and do you have any questions? For open source, all are free. But the pricing is, the Knapsack, for instance, is the tool that was created by a guy from Poland, from Krakow, Lunar Logic. And it's pretty cheap. It's like $1 something per repo, something like that. Simple Coff, it's also like $5 maybe per repo. So it's not like, you know, extremely expensive stuff. Don't remember the pricing. Some dollars. So I believe that all tools that I shown here, it's like $10 in total monthly per private repo. Okay, and that's it. Thank you.